And then, of course, that leads into what happened in my involvement, a few years later, when we were back there again as a result of what happened in 9/11.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to jump to next. Your description of 9/11 and Ground Zero, growing up in New Jersey, this is obviously something that I've been to many times. I've seen, around 9/11 too, there's obviously a lot of conversation that happens. Just, families were so affected, especially in the New Jersey and tri-state area. And so it's always been something that's a part of my life. And your description was one of the first that I've really gotten to hear of somebody who was on Ground Zero at the impact, going through searching. So can you take us through 9/11, both just the circumstances in general and then your own perspective being on the ground, going through at that time, having to look through, the ashes and be able to kind of put in perspective what just happened?
Sure. Obviously that was probably one of the most profound moments of my life is to go to Ground Zero and see the devastation and what happened. And of course, that's affected America, and we're still dealing with the effects of that today. And it was just a devastating attack on our country. And, I think back to, my time there at Ground Zero, and it was so overwhelming to me, just to walk out on 15 acres of complete devastation. It looked like, a nuclear bomb had gone off. It was nothing like I'd seen and nothing like I expected. It was just so overwhelming. And it was tough. It was really tough to deal with it because, at first, obviously, you want to do what you can. Are there people still alive underneath all this rubble? Can we get to them? Because there have been situations where people have survived quite a while after being buried. So that was your thought, just try to rescue people. But when we got there, quickly we realized it was so overwhelming, so difficult to deal with that at one point I was praying that I hope no one is alive underneath there, because I was afraid that we would not get to them in time, and the thought of them suffering under this, with the thought of possibly being rescued, but maybe they're injured and they're suffering, was pretty tough on everyone to deal with. So it wasn't long before it just became a recovery mission. But just walking out there, I just remember seeing fire trucks just flattened to where they're almost waist high, police cars crushed, the piles of just rubble and steel bent in every direction. It's all still smoking. You've got fires that are still burning. Think about all that pressure and coming down, tons and tons of pressure with all the buildings falling. And anytime you moved anything at all air would rush in and it would ignite again. So it was really a tough situation. And it was a crime scene. It was the largest crime scene in our history, and it had to be processed. We had to look for evidence. We had to look for, obviously, things that belonged to people who perished. Maybe we can identify, who may have perished, and all the things that we needed to do. So it still needed to be processed. And of course, we're reeling with the fact that, there are police officers that, they lost a lot of police officers. The fire department lost over 300 people on that day. So it was a massive blow to our country. And we were very concerned with, who was responsible. In the early days, we just didn't know. It's just, all of these, like typically when something like this happens, there's tons of rumors, tons of information, tons of raw intelligence that comes in. And so, you got to kind of peel through all of that to figure out, what's true and what's not true. So in the early days, it was a little difficult to determine that.
What were some of the thoughts in the early days, like the rumors that were circulating? I mean, you had, in that time frame, you had people like Ted Kaczynski who were around. You had the Unabomber. You had there was an attack at the Twin Towers in the late 90s as well. So there was a bunch of different possibilities. I mean, what was some of the immediate thoughts? Was it likely terrorism in terms of like looking towards the Middle East, or was it just we're open to anything? We're going to be looking around and trying to figure it out, and this could be happening. It could be an American. It could be someone from the Middle East or wherever. What were the original thoughts there?
Well, when that first plane hit, everybody was, could this be an accident? Could have been some type of malfunction? We just didn't know. But when this second plane hit, that sealed the deal that we knew it was terrorists involved. Exactly, where they were from and, all of that, we just didn't know in the early stages. But that came fairly quickly when we kind of honed in on who it was that was responsible for this. And then the investigation, of course, just got into full speed. But we were real concerned about, is there anyone else out there? obviously we had the attack in the Pentagon. We had the plane that went down to Pennsylvania. But we were like, who else is out there? So I credit the FAA for quickly moving in and grounding all the flights, which, obviously would prevent anybody from using a plane again until we sorted it out.
Was there any indication that there was other plots that day?
Yeah, there were people that were arrested on a train that were taken out. So there was, our concern was there were more people in the United States. And do you really know if you got them all? It's always a question, right? How do you prove a negative? But it was pretty scary time because we didn't know if there were going to continue to be more attacks, if this was just the first wave, if there was going to be more. Are they going to come in through ports now? So what's going on? So it was really a situation that was almost overwhelming in the early days.
How do you think America changed that day?
Well, we changed big time in terms of our belief that oceans will keep us safe. We realized that that's just not possible anymore. I think we realized that we have internal problems, that we have people within our country that are our enemies. So that changed. I think obviously our security posture changed forevermore. And that just led to a whole bunch of other things going on. But I also think too that there was some good that came out of it in terms of America coming together after 9/11, and the patriotism, and we were kind of all behind this together. And you could see that in the sporting events that took place afterwards, and when President Bush threw out the baseball and when he opened up Yankee Stadium again. So all that was great, but it shook us to the core that we are vulnerable.